decided I'm going to replace my rear brakes on my CB 500X 2018 Brembo rotor, replacement rotor, and you notice it's round. It's not like the stock one. Also, the Brembo pads, rear pads, match the Brembo rotor. See, it's just not round, so I think there's the less contact. Being that 2018 has insufficient rear brakes. I have SBS pads on there now, which are better than the stock. I noticed the 2021 rear brakes are completely adequate. I don't know what they did. I see the pads are different. Whatever they did to the rear brakes in 2021, they solved the inadequate rear brake problem. Now, with the chain on and the motor in first gear, I positioned the rotor bolt about here. So about here. Crack them loose a little bit. Also, one little tip I use. I'll use a marker to mark the first one, so I don't mix them up. Put the bike back in neutral. Just double check that I loosened all the bolts. 1, 2. Here's the one I marked with matching marker 3 and 4. And all the bolts are loosened. And also, don't mix up the. Keep the spacers in order if you don't mix them up. Here's another one of my tips. When I take off my rear wheel, I'm on my center stand. I'm on the center stand now. When I take off my rear wheel, I have a piece of wood that fits exactly underneath the tire. And this way, this holds the rear wheel in position when you pull the axle out. Mark the screw with a magic marker, and also the wheel and the screw. And this is the analog brake sensor. And removed all the bolts. And what I do is I keep all the bolts in order that I take them out. So I'm going to put them back in where they came out. Remove the old rotor. Take out the airlock sensor. Clean it off with alcohol. All these surfaces clean with alcohol. All these surfaces clean off. All these surfaces. All these surfaces. Then I put a small film of lithium grease around here. Just not much, just a little bit of lithium grease along this edge. Okay? Same here. Lithium grease. Small amount, not too much, don't put too much, just a tiny little bit of lithium grease. not in the hole either. Get too much on there, you want to clean it off. Also the top surface. Like I said, if there's any excess in the holes, you don't want it in the holes at all. You don't want any grease on the bolts at all. No excess. No excess grease, okay? Even on the outside, clean the grease off here. And also right up in here. No excess grease to get on the rotor later. Alright, reposition the sensor back where you took it out. So it goes back on the way it came off. It's a brand new rotor. No grease or oil on these screws. They originally had Loctite. Screws back in order, they came out. Bring them down, Still recording, okay. Bring them down till they just touch. You can move this a little bit here. You can't move it. I want to leave it just a little bit. Loose, okay? Them all in like that. Should be able to move it just a little bit, alright? Now, it's like I say, nothing's perfect, right? But we'll still try to center it best we can. Try to get it as centered as we possibly can. Okay. Then just snug it up. Just like split the difference, you know. Nothing's perfect, but we try to center it the best we can. I'm sure if they're racers, you know, they're a race bike, they have all kinds of micrometers and jigs to get their parts a lot more centered than that, because even the original is not perfectly centered. So just snug it up, because we'll torque it after we put it back on the bike. Use this board to hold the tire up, so when you put the axle in, it's easy to line up the axle. I replaced the brake pads, cleaned out the caliper, cleaned everything up. All I did was put the tire up on this board and place the axle in on the other side. Now I'm going to I'm going to fish the axle through here, through the wheel. Yeah, right, sure, it's easy. It's should going easy. All the way to the brakes. Here's the brake. Yeah, through the brakes. We'll put the other keeper in there. Okay. Let's see if we can get that in there. There it is. There it is. Okay, great. Put on the keeper. Okay, knot.
Oh, bread. Sponge bread.
We put the nut back on. Right? The brakes are all in. I torqued down the, everything's torqued. This is torqued, that's torqued. This isn't torqued, but what we're going to do is, I already torqued these, but I'm going to show you how I torqued that. I set up my torque tool, 42 nanometers. According to the book, it's 42 nanometers. And when I torqued the disc rotor to the wheel, what I did is I put a mark on this. There's a mark, if you can see it. I marked the bolt with the magic marker. So one of the bolts out of the four has a mark, so I know which bolt I start with and which bolt I end with. So I'm going to hold the brake. I'm going to hold the brake with my foot over here. To hold the wheel. And then I did it in two stages. The torque was 42. Just double check that. Torque is 42, so I did like 32, then I went to 42. So I'll hold the brake down, put the torque wrench in, torque it. Then I'll move to 180 degrees. So 1, then 2. So you won't just torque them all in a row. We'll torque them in a sequence. Okay, so hold the brake. This is 180. Torque that. Okay. Then we'll go back and we'll torque the other two. 180, then the last one. Alright, and first I did 32, then I went to 42. So I did it in two stages. Then after, I started back with my line, and just to double check all of them, went all in a row, all the way down the line. Just to check that I got all four. They're torqued, I'm just checking. One, two, three. 4. And then there's the line. So you know you got all 4 in sequence. So now we torque the rotor, the pads, the calipers all torqued, everything's set to go, and we want to test to make sure that everything's properly, that the pads are properly in the spring clips and nothing's dragging. So we'll spin the wheel and hit the brake, okay? And when we let go, the wheel should spin freely. It shouldn't really drag. It might drag here and there in spots. Listen. See? It's dragging lightly. Stop. The wheel is free. It doesn't bind up. It doesn't. Very free. You can hit the brake. Yet the wheel will spin free when you let go. There'll be a little bit of play. You can even feel it in here. It will be nice and loose. And so you know the brakes are right. One last step. After everything's back together, before you apply the brakes for the first time, just to make sure there's no grease on the rotor that might get on brakes, take brake cleaner and a brand clean rag, spray a little bit on there, and just wipe off both the inside and the outside of the rotor. It might even be a good idea every now and then just to take some brake cleaner and clean that off.